And we are back on the air. I apologize for the technical difficulties, y'all. Things like that happen, man. Got a thunderstorm coming through my area, so got knocked offline for a moment, but we are back. And so let's go ahead and continue with the video, Brother Jay, if you could pull that back up on the screen. And let me go ahead and present you. I'm going to present you real quick, and so we can put that back on the screen. And in the event that hopefully I don't get knocked offline again, man. But I think I'm going to take some preventative measures just in case, so I can get on my phone. So without further ado, go ahead and play that video, Brother Jay, so we can continue critiquing the dialogue.
All right, here we go.
So if I keep quiet, it's to say I believe in it. There's people who still go to church every Sunday, man, that don't believe in this stuff at all, simply because they're afraid that their parents will hate them or kick them out or not want to talk to them or be treated differently. But they just choose to just say, you know what? I'm just going to fake it till I make it. You see what I'm saying? And so Christians don't understand like what they do to people by forcing this on them, by saying by either giving credit to God every morning on their Facebook page, but then get mad at me because I say something differently on mine. You see, so you can't ask me, why do I talk about it? At the same time, if God is so real to you, why do you feel so much of a purpose to talk about it all the time? You see, why does God need you advocating him if God is so real? Why does God need you defending him? If anything, I have a right to talk about what I'm talking about. I still have loved ones who believe in this stuff and give their money and time to this. See, but to a Christian, if it's not real, why do you talk about it? I just want them to see some type of perspective. And if you don't mind going into that a little bit, you said that you were awakened for a while and, you didn't talk about it with me.
Right. No, I didn't. When I was coming up, there were very few people in my family that I could talk to. My grandmother and a cousin. That was it. That's all I could talk to about it, because everybody else was so indoctrinated that you have to be mental. You have to have a mental condition for you not to believe in this. Right. Because that's what they've always just, this is what our grandparents, this is what parents, great grandparents, this is what we do. Mm-hmm. And, as I got into more, as I became an adult and you get into society and I started having conversations with other ministers, as a Black man in the South, I was being told that I had prison knowledge or nigger knowledge for even believing outside of this book, right? I like to liken it unto, and before I go there, a lot of people have expressed to me that one of their struggles is that they know that if they say something, that they could lose their spouse, that they could lose their family, that people are so ingrained in this that family relationships are broken, and that's hard for a person to walk away from. Right. But one of the bigger things that I don't think people realize how involved religion is in society as a whole. It's kind of like in the same way that in the 1960s or in the 1940s, when a Black person stood up for the rights of other Black people, not only were they ridiculed by the oppressive system, but they was ridiculed by the other Black people who just wanted to get along. Why are you coming in here stirring up this trouble? You're just a little troublemaker. Down here in the South, that was huge with people like MLK. Why are you stirring up trouble? We are doing well.
I'm gonna come back to that. Sorry about that. Robert Rambo, stay tuned. I'm gonna come back to that. Sorry about that.
I do want to say something right here, actually, and on what the guy just said, and actually something I just saw in their live feed. That I'm pretty sure you guys can see it there by Private Rambo. I'm pretty sure you guys can see that right there. If y'all can hear me, I don't know if y'all can hear me. Man. Can you hear me? Oh, okay, cool. When he was talking about the, for example, the children who, they're afraid to basically leave the church or the faith or whatever case, because their parents, how they be treated by their parents and stuff like that. This kind of goes back into what we were saying a little bit earlier. I'm gonna paraphrase, I can't remember verbatim right now, but is when you make a decision like this to leave the faith, to leave Christ, to reject him, not only reject him and go into the world and do your thing, but to actually come back and proclaim everything is made up and false, there's gonna be some backlash there, man. I mean, I don't understand what kind of reaction these brothers expected for their families to have when they rejected Christ. I don't know what type of reaction, like, oh, it's okay, you rejected him, you're still my son. I don't know what kind of reaction they expected to have. But I wanted to draw attention right quick to their live screen thing, to that question somebody asked, because this actually shows part of the problem. All right, so this is by Private Rambo. It said, my mom's just passed away and she was gay. Can anyone give me any advice? Because the Bible has a tight grip on my brain and it has me believing she went to hell. Now, let me get the scripture right quick. All right.
All right, while you're doing that, I did want to, offer a quick commentary on some of the things that they were saying in the video just now. So, his name is Lorenzo, right? So Lorenzo seems to say that, they call this prison knowledge or whatever, or I'm not going to use the other word. And when he mentions that, now, truth be told, the sort of quote unquote scholarship that conscious people tend to promote tends to be completely absolutely pseudo scholarship. Anybody who's ever interacted with many, now I'm not going to say all of them, but a good portion of them use a ton of pseudo scholarship. I mean, seriously, man, if you ever have a sit down with some of these cats, and especially the things that they say against Christianity, as we saw earlier with Kevin, the things that he was saying are just absolutely outlandish. Matter of fact, even the brother Adam Coleman, with his interaction with Ray Hagins. I mean, Ray Hagins talking about the Council of Nicaea was discussing Serapis. Just historically laughable things, just laughable assertions. People come up with this sort of theory. Well, my pastor said it was a bunch of a prison or whatever he said knowledge. And I'm thinking to myself, if you were a serious researcher, right? Whether this person considers himself a whether he's just a person who's a conscious, quote unquote, conscious skeptic. If you were actually meticulous in your research and you looked into these claims that you're making, that you claim are scholarly, you realize that they're not scholarly. They're actually absolutely debunkable. And if any one of these cats would like to have an interaction with us to find out just how unscholarly it is, we would be more than glad to have a sit down with you guys. But I mean, it's ridiculous because and then they're, like you said, Jay, they're wondering why people are rejecting them who believe in Christ.
Yep. And so I wanted to read two scriptures pertaining to Private Rambo. Now, the first thing that kind of threw me off about the person's question is, number one, if the Bible has a tight grip on their brain, which I'm thinking they grew up either in a Christian household or now they may be a person that's like in the position where Lorenzo just described, somebody who really wants to leave the church, but they just stay there because of family. So this could be somebody that's in that type of predicament, because I don't know what type of person that really believe in the scriptures would listen to two guys who reject the Bible, who said it's fake and made up. I don't, and then ask them for advice pertaining to something they don't believe in. So, so that shows in that. But concerning her question, all right, my mom just passed away and she was gay. Can anyone give me any advice? Because the Bible has a tight grip on my brain and it has me believing she went to hell. One of the first things we have to realize is just like with death, when a family member dies, this is a reality that we live in. It's not something that you glory in when it happens. You mourn and you weep, but it's a reality of life because man his flesh has to die because of the judgment passed down that God passed down after Adam sinned. So, so that's a reality that we live in. Many of us is going to experience that one day or the other. All right. But I want to read two scriptures right quick. The first one is Romans 8:13. This is pertaining to her mom's. It says, "For if ye live after the flesh, ye shall die. But if ye through the Spirit do mortify the deeds of the body, ye shall live." All right. So if the bottom line is, if her mother wasn't living according to the Spirit, all right, which you received through faith, but instead lived her life in the flesh, knowing she was this way, didn't really care, you know, because we have openly, you know, homosexuals that are within churches. They lead in praise worship. They know they're that way, and they're not trying to change that way. They're just living in the flesh, being carnal minded. If they die that way, in that condition, they will die. That's the end game. Because
well, how about we say it this way? If they died in that state, they were never a believer to begin with, because a believer would have the Holy Spirit, would be changed internally, and would show that change externally, right? So
that's a better way to put it in words. Yep.
So the thing is that, saying that to be insensitive to this person's loss.
No.
But truth be told, we know that there's only one pathway to the Father, and that's through the Son. Now, a lot of people will say, "Oh, there's many paths to God." Well, I'll say this. You know, in a sense, and hear me out before anybody jumps the gun, in a sense, that's true. Everybody has to go before God on Judgment Day, right?
Yeah.
But the truth is that not everybody is going to be with God in his kingdom. And so if a person is living in that sort of lifestyle or state, and they claim to be a believer, then either they're a fair weather, just, you know, arbitrary believer who reads scripture and hasn't been transformed, doesn't have the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, or they were never, you know, in either case, they don't have the Holy Spirit. But what I'm saying, either they're fair weather, or they just go to church because that's the thing to do, right? It's like a social thing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's something that we encounter in our communities, in the Black and Hispanic community. People go to church because they like the worship music, or because they like, you know, I've actually been in hangouts, for example, with atheists, right? And they've actually said, "Oh yeah, we don't believe in Jesus, we don't believe in the Bible, but my wife likes to go to church because she likes the praise music." Saying that they go to church only because they enjoy the praise music. In fact, Brother Adam, doesn't the church that he had set up over there in North Carolina, or wherever he was at, wasn't that church, didn't they have like praise music, almost like generic praise music?
Yeah, man, it was very strange, very strange. And yeah, you're right. They had a praise team, and they would do songs like, you know, "How Great Is Our God," you know, or something like that, something that mentioned God, but then not specifically Jesus. But this was taking place in a church, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's very odd. But I mean, you're absolutely right. They had the kind of their own praise. They took Jesus out of it. They kind of kept the God part in like a very vague type of way that they mentioned him, you know. So yeah.
Right. You know, so I'm a bit curious that, you know, to see atheists outright saying, "Oh yeah, we love that praise music." You know, granted, some of these people are actually going to Christian churches, and they're, you know, going along with the praise music, but they don't believe in the one who the praise music is directed to, which is telling and strange at that. But, you know, needless to say.
I'll put a little side note out there regarding the praise music, Adam. When's the last time you heard a gospel song tell someone to repent?
It's been a while.
Been a long time, man.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Vic.
Yeah, can I throw something? Oh, okay.
No, go right ahead. No, you go right ahead, brother. Yeah.
Yeah. See, I wanted to say something, because this is one of the parts of the video I wanted to get to. Because I believe in response to Private Rambo's question, Kevin Wesley goes into, you know, giving his perspective on homosexuality and so on, right? And one thing I noticed was, and this is something that is very key. Okay, now once you try to get the Christian God out of the picture, right, but you still want to hold on to this idea that there's a such thing as a right and a wrong. Now, the truth of the matter is, if there is no God, like no God whatsoever, then there is no objective right and wrong. But that we can get to that question at maybe a separate time. But my point is, if you want to hold on to this idea that there's still like a morality, but you throw God out of the picture, then that means you got to go somewhere else to find your moral direction, right? Now, what you notice here in this video, what do they start talking about? They start talking about nature. You know, one of them brings up, you know, will ducks, you know, have homosexual sex? And I think somebody said something about giraffes and all these type of things. They start talking about different animals within nature that have homosexual relations, and they're using that as like a moral justification to say, hey, it's natural, therefore it's okay for you human beings to do. Now, the thing about it is, when you think about it, that's a terrible argument, because you have sharks that eat their young. That's nature too. right? So if we're taking our moral cues from nature and leaving it at that, there's all sorts of things that occur in nature that would not be appropriate. I mean, you have animals that rape one another. All right. Now that may happen in the animal kingdom, but obviously that would not be appropriate for human beings. You see what I'm saying? You have, like I said, you have animals that eat their young and all this sort of thing. So what you notice is they've booted God out, the God of the Bible out, and they've tried to take on nature to give them their cues for their morality. But then you take on this moral system that ultimately, when you really take it to its logical conclusions, doesn't give you the sense of right and wrong that we as humans instinctively know is appropriate or inappropriate. And so here's the thing, when it comes to the question about homosexuality, I think a big problem is that, especially among young people, they assume that the biblical understanding of homosexuality is just like a kind of an old school, subjective, well, y'all just think it's wrong, but it's not really that serious kind of a thing. Like y'all just old school. But you have to understand that when it comes to the Christian perspective, what we're really saying is God has created man and woman for a particular purpose. Okay, there is a purpose to everything in existence. All right. Now, our purpose isn't the same as any other species. All right. We are created in God's image. Now, I'm going to just speed this up. But given that we have a purpose that God has created us for, marriage being a reflection of the relationship between man and Christ and kind of that relationship within the Trinity. I mean, marriage really reflects those things, the coming together, that union. Marriage is a reflection of something holy and sanctified. That's why Christians are so gung-ho, or at least should be so gung-ho, about biblical marriage. It's not because we just want to be sticks in the mud or just prevent other people from enjoying their life. It's because, no, marriage between a man and a woman was something that God instituted for a purpose. And so when we contend for traditional marriage, we're contending for that purpose. We're trying to uphold what it is that God created. It's not just because we have these opinions that conflict with the modern perspective of, well, we just do, sleep with whoever you want. No, sex is holy. Marriage is holy. Okay, the dynamic between a man and a woman is holy, and that's why it's so important. So he asked the question, Kevin Wesley in the video asked the question, like, why does God care, like, basically who you sleep with? Well, the reason why God cares is because man and woman have been created for a purpose. And God has a particular design as to what glorifies him the most. And when you step outside of that design, ultimately it's going to be hurtful to you, and it's outside of his will. It's not just because we want to, be mean. God has a purpose for everybody who's listening, everybody who's ever walked this earth. And when you step outside that purpose, God is going to have a problem with that. So I just wanted to kind of just throw that in there.
Yeah. So, and just to add on too, so the line of argumentation, right? Oh, these animals, homosexual, and that sort of thing. Well, what about the animals that eat other animals? So does that mean that it's natural for humans to eat other humans? I mean, using that same line of reasoning, right? Let's just follow it to its logical conclusion.
Exactly.
Right. But of course, they'll raise an objection right there and say, "Oh, nah, brother. See, now you're going too far." But the point is that if you're using one analogy, why not use an analogy that again goes back to the same, the same, I guess, the dichotomy that you're trying to propose. But of course, since at that point, it doesn't fit, right? Because what they're really trying to do is undermine, the truth that the Lord has laid out, right?
Exactly.
And so, I mean, and here's another thing. Jay, you kind of alluded to it in the previous hangout. When the scriptures talk about, they went out from us because they were never of us. That's 1 John 2:19, if I'm not mistaken, right? If you could go ahead and pull that up. And I'm not doing this to disrespect these men. I'm just being honest. I'm not saying, now again, if these men are so vehement in their disdain for the truth, which is Christ, then this is what the scriptures have to say. Now, I'm not saying that they're reprobates and they're done for. For all we know, they could be going through a prodigal stage. But needless to say, what they're doing right now is sin, and it's wrong, and they need to repent of that. They need to turn from that. But all right, so here we go. So is 19. There we go. They actually, can you go ahead and read that, brother?
All right, no problem. All right, this 1 John 2, verse 19. They went out from us, but they were not of us. For if they had been of us, they would no doubt have continued with us. But they went out, that they might be made manifest that they were not all of us.
There you go. And so the thing is this. If we know, as a matter of fact, you know what's funny? At the very top, 18, little children, it is the last time, and as ye have heard, that the Antichrist shall come. Even now there are many Antichrists, whereby we know that it is the last time. And it's funny because even during that time, we know that there were people who were rejecting Christ, right? To be Antichrist is to be against Christ, right? To oppose him.
Right.
So a person who opposes Christ is rightfully an Antichrist. Now, if we know that the scriptures warn of Antichrist, and the Antichrist being, what we see prophetically speaking, but Antichrist in a general sense being those who oppose Christ, why is it that these men are acting so appalled if people are reacting accordingly based on their rejection of Christ? Now, granted, I said this in the first hangout, that as brothers and sisters in Christ, even if they are to, what's the word I'm thinking of? Even if they're to not fellowship with people like that, clearly you're not going to fellowship with a disbeliever, right? Not to be unevenly yoked. If a person is not to fellowship with them, does not mean that a person cannot be kind to this person, cannot show even compassion. But when it comes to our position, doctrinally speaking, what the scriptures clearly lay out, we're not making compromises, right? We are not going to make compromises when it comes to that. And I don't believe any believer is going to make a compromise. You're hurling false accusations against the scriptures, against Christ. You can expect backlash. Now, if a person is being hateful to the point of abuse, where they're just like acting completely carnal, we're against that too. A believer should not be acting carnal. But if we're talking about rejection, now here's the thing, because the reason why I'm kind of prefacing, what I'm about to say is because, I don't know what their interactions have been like with these people, but I will say this. If these people are believers and they're simply rejecting what you say and saying, well, if you're gonna disparage Christ, you and I can't fellowship, then guess what? They're right for doing that. Because our first and primary allegiance is to Christ. That is a hill we are all willing to die on. And trust me, those people that you claim didn't really believe in Christianity, yet they were, somehow they were giving their lives, dying, being eaten alive by animals in arenas for the faith, because the faith is real and Christ does exist. Those people, if you would have encountered them back then, they would have did the exact same thing. They would have rejected you and would have kept their distance from you. And that's to be expected, especially for somebody giving their life for Christ. And you know what? Everybody in here would give their life for Christ. We're willing to die on that hill.
Daggone right.
And I am unapologetic about my love for Jesus Christ. So it is what it is. Now it's this whole notion of, slave religion. It's because, because Latinos and blacks, they had it beaten into them and all this nonsense. Nah. And that's another thing, right? The whole, what's the word I'm thinking of? It's like the guilt tripping, or the guilting people into not really affirming their faith, it's a slave religion, so it's to guilt you into associating your belief, your love for Christ with slavery or the slave master and the heinous acts that took place during the times of slavery. But truth be told, nobody in here now, and Adam and Jay, if you guys could share your thoughts on this too, man, because and also the brother who just came in. Since all of y'all are African Americans, I'm Latino, but y'all are African Americans. Share your thoughts on that for the audience, please, especially for these two individuals if they will watch this video in the future. You know, this whole guilting people into associating Christianity with the slave master or you know, that sort of thing. You know.
Yeah, Brother Jay, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first, I think. This is my outlook on it. Obviously, the faith was established way before the transatlantic slave trade. So definitely not taking that narrative or accepting it from anybody that says, oh, we weren't Christians before the slave trade, as if, you know, we just all became that all of a sudden over here. The faith was established hundreds of years prior to the transatlantic slave trade. So I'm not accepting that. I do know that during the time of slavery that it wasn't, it was against, you know, the plantation rules or whatever the case is for those that were captives to read. We understand historically, you know, people were dying for that. And just as with the times of the Pharisees, just as during the times of the apostles when they're dealing with the Judaizers, the church, with the early church fathers and the different heresies and stuff that came in there, I look at what happened with slavery and the oppressors' usage of the Bible, no different, in no different light. All right, just as the same of those men came and were misinterpreting the scriptures, bringing people back into bondage under Moses and all these different things. Those coming in with the heresies, denying the Christ that bought them, just as the apostle said. I look at it no different than I don't look at it no different than these false teachers that's laying up in the churches today. I don't look at it any different than Bishop Nathaniel and these other camp leaders. They're all misinterpreting, misguiding, deceiving the people with God's words. The Bible is not at fault, but the men that's teaching you these heresies are. So I look at it that same way. We understand that the gospel is spiritual. They can't, what's the word I'm looking for? They can't misinterpret that. They can't misinterpret or deceive you if you place your faith in Christ and have the Spirit of God, because the Spirit of God will guide you into all truth. So that's the way that's my outlook on it. So when people try to say, you know, slave religion, all kind of stuff, first I just smirk at them because it was established before slavery here in America. And then also when they go into, you know, oh, the things you learned, you know, basically came from the white man and all that different stuff. I look at it no different than like I just did all those different examples I listed. All right. Men who don't understand God, who are using God's word for their benefit, just like G-Con brought out earlier, you know, the lust of eyes, lust of flesh. We see that was happening with the Pharisees. They were abusing their powers and putting extra burdens on the people. So I look at it no different. The gospel is spiritual, and God is a spirit. They that worship him must worship in the spirit of truth, and you only receive that spirit through faith. And the spirit comes in and dwells you and leads you into all truth. So that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I'm gonna be real with you. And I try not to be like, you know, condescending or anything like that. But when somebody comes to me with this white man's religion thing, the first thing I want to do is see where they're coming from. Okay. And what I mean by that is if you're making the allegation that Christianity is a white man religion, then you got to talk to me about African Christians like Tychonius, Augustine, Pope Gelasius I, Bishop Cyprian, Demetrius, Perpetua and Felicitas, Tertullian, Origen. You know what I mean? Like Cyril of Alexandria. I mean, I'm saying, like, if you can't have a conversation, thank you, Moses the Ethiopian, Abba Anthony. I can keep going. I'm saying now, because I'm in this history. Trust and believe, I'm in this history. So if you can't talk to me about Zera Yacob, you know, from Ethiopia, all these Ethiopian Christians that were practicing Christianity, I'm talking about for literally 1,500 years before the transatlantic slave trade, then we honestly just can't even have a conversation about it because you haven't done the history. You know what I'm saying? Because, and then on top of that, if you can, let's just talk about the transatlantic slave trade. If you can't talk to me about Olaudah Equiano, Ottobah Kagano, I'm saying, if you can't talk to me about just, you know, Frederick Douglass, just you know, Henry Highland Garnett, John Sweat Rock, I can keep throwing names out. If you can't talk to me about the African American Christians who fought more for our liberty than anybody that I'm dealing with on the internet, I know that, then we can't have a conversation because you haven't done the history. You haven't done your homework. The bottom, and then on top of that too, I'm sorry, I just can't be swayed by emotion. I'm just not that kind of person. You got to come to me with logic. So when you start talking about Christianity as a white man religion, the first thing I think of, like my brother Red Pill said here in this in the chat, you talking about, that's a genetic fallacy right there. The genetic fallacy is to either reject or affirm something based on how somebody came to believe it. Okay. So in simple terms, regardless of what white slave masters did, none of what they did cancels out the fact that that Jesus, was God, taught his disciples, was died on the cross and then rose from the grave, all in first century AD. Now, whatever white folks did, white slave masters did 1,500 years after the fact, that doesn't change the past of what God did. You see what I'm saying? And that's what I'm basing, my affirmation of Christianity. I'm basing it on the evidence, for the resurrection and things of that nature. So anything other than that, you're just talking genetic fallacy to me. And as I said in the chat here a second ago, a fallacy is by definition false. That's what a fallacy means. So I'm sorry, man. When people come to me with this, white man religion stuff, the first thing I want to hear is like, okay, well, are you coming at me from an emotional standpoint, or are you really going to deal, with this from a logical standpoint? And when you're talking about just the evidence for the Christian faith, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to hear it. You know what I'm saying? Because most of these conscious community cats haven't done this study. All they want to talk about is slavery. But I could go further with that. Matter of fact, maybe I can put it in the live chat. I did a whole hour and 40 minutes on this subject. Is Christianity white man religion? So y'all can peep that. But that's what I got to say about it, man. These cats too emotional, man.
Adam Coleman be coming with it. What's going on?
Yeah.
Now, as I stated before, those that deal with history, and you look at the historical context, and I also brought out what evil is. When we look at Ra in the Hebrew, and it means calamity, misery. Unfortunately, these are some of the things that is the cycle of life since man have fallen in these beastly ways. So when we look at servitude or servants, Israel, the cultural context of that, they was taught on how they should treat their servant. Now I know people didn't brought out certain passages without really getting into those passages to really understand them fully, and just make it seem so ridiculous or awful. Now this is Eastern culture. This is Near East culture. These people are coming up out of, as well as the Levant area is in that area. So you have to really study those things to really look at and see what it's dealing with. Now, anytime you have a servant, mainly it's because you're trying to build you're trying to build your government. You're trying to build a nation, and you're trying to do it fast because you need the manpower, especially when you got opposing enemies. So when you look at Israel come right up out of Egypt. They come up out of Egypt, right, with a mixed multitude. Israel is come into the wilderness, and they meet the Father. They meet the person who they're going to divine to help them establish their nation. No different from any other culture, any other nation, because most cultures go into these temples, they get these revelations, and they divine into their deities, and those deities help them to establish their government or their civilization, and or whatever it is. And so it's the same thing for Israel. Israel goes into the wilderness. They establish their relationship with the Creator. He gives them laws, statutes, and commandments that they must carry out, as well as how they must govern themselves when they get to this land that they're going to possess. Now, they're possessing this land because the prior people that was in that land that had the priesthood, or that took on it was too much blood shedding. They was not doing what they should have been doing in the land, and he's sending them to that land. And so they go into the land, and a lot of people that's in the land, they have these different plagues, different diseases that's going on within that land. We can also verify that through Catelyn Keelan, Catelyn, what's her name? How do you say it? Kathy Keelan, or I don't know how to say her name, pronounce it, but she excavated Jericho. And when she excavated Jericho, what we found is that there was certain plagues that hit there, as well as other areas within those areas coming into the Levant area. And a lot of these plagues that we see were mainly, you can look at them and see that they cause people to leave early or get up out of those places, or a lot of dead was buried there. So we know that there was a lot of plagues there. So Israel was taught not to go into those people that was in their vicinity and destroy those people. But some of those people that was not driven out, so they made them tributaries or tributaries, or however you say it. And so those people they used, as well as the people that was outside of Israel, was war spoils or booties, basically, to where they brought them in and they helped them to build their walls. And also they paid also contractors to come in just as well to help them to build the temple or their walls. And also those people served within their armies, as well as when you start looking at Uriah the Hittite and other people. So these people are establishing a government, and so now they have allies. And so a lot of people that's amongst them are in servitude to them, as well as they're using them for maids to help them to deliver their babies, as well as captives of the women's, are taking them unto wives. But they was taught not to do the things that was being done into them, which was in Egypt, according to the narrative. When we look at the narrative of how Moses seen them, one person getting beat on or whatever the case may be, they was taught not to do that. Now, most people
real quick. Now, real quick, because that just reminded me of something that we didn't address earlier. Kevin said that the Egyptians didn't have any slaves, which is completely false. Where is he getting this idea? You don't even need the Bible for that. That's it's like it's on their walls. I mean, you got the relief with the Nubians getting cracked with. I mean, come on, man. I mean, let me see if I can find it around me. I got that
right, and he definitely said that, and there's a lot of. I'm not gonna lie, in that area there is a lot of argument about did Egypt have slaves, as far as during that time period. And what we're starting to find out is by works of certain scholars, that they definitely had slaves. They definitely had it, because you're not just establishing this world or this place, and you're not, and we just showed you the normal palette. We clearly showed you that there was slaves that was on that palette, as well as people whose heads was chopped off that was being taken captive. I mean, there was chopped off, and also people that was being taken captive. And also I have palettes of also people going into captivity, within that area too, just as well, and I'll bring that out at a later date. But just to expound on that, there was slaves, and they're starting to find that they're, when they begin to dig and excavate a little bit deeper within these certain tales, that they definitely had slaves. And
let me actually show one. Let me just show one example, man. Come on, man. This is ridiculous. Now, all right. So here we go, real quick. Just trying to screen share. Can you tell me if you guys can see my screen? You guys see my screen?
Yeah.
This is on the walls. This is, what are they talking about? What do you think? What do you think these things are? Hold on a second. Can y'all see this? Can y'all see my mouse?
Yeah, I see your mouse.
I mean, what they think this is? What they think the being bound like that? What do you think they just? Yeah. What, they praying? That's what they think they do. They praying. I mean, I got another one around here that's even clearer. I mean, I got tons of these, man. But
it's jewelry, man. It's a chain. It's just jewelry, bro.
That's the black man. That's Israel, man. Cause we wear gold chains.
Yeah, the Mr. T jump on. Come on, man.
Oh man, but it's crazy because he said they didn't have any slaves. Now come on, man. Every culture in antiquity at some point in time had slaves, man. Come on, let's just be real here.
That's ridiculous that he said that, man. And I forgot that point. I'm glad you brought that up. But just to show you that what they was using to help to build their kingdom up, and they had people that came in that helped them. So they got pretty big pretty fast. Now most historians may say, or the consensus may say, well, they wasn't the people, they wasn't the nation, but they're mentioning the Merenptah Stela as being a people that Ramses also said that the first his father and also Merenptah had conquered the people that was in the southern and northern tribe, who also some of the Assyrian kings came and mentioned this, also mentioned in the Mesha stone, as well as when you start talking about the Moabites. So there's definitely evidence of these people of Israel, and they wasn't no pushovers. You know, they wasn't no pushovers. And as you see some of the remnant of the Israel that's in the land today, there are no pushovers today. And most people might have an argument with that and say, well, these people are not Israelites. Well, I mean, they carry some type. A lot of these people, whether they down in Ethiopia, whether if they in the west, more west, whether if they're in the north in Europe or in Asia, these people have something that's about them to where you can tell they gained some knowledge from the Father God that they carried with them, and so they carry these things with them into their own land. For instance, let me mention one of them. Um, the Arabics had all of that land over there. They even moved in some of the land that was up in Europe. And the land that we see that was in the Levant area was land that was desolate. You couldn't do nothing with it. It was burned. Even the Britons didn't want it. They didn't want it at all. Britain did not want it either. They didn't want none of it. So they gave it to Israel, but Israel bought it back. Actually, I'm sorry, Israel bought it back from the Arabs that was in that place because they sold it to them. Well, after that took place, they began to make that place fertile. They begin to actually make it bring forth. So it seems to me they know how to cultivate areas really good, you know. So it's something that they got. Even when you talk about the Bua tribe that's down down in the south, that's dealing with the Ethiopians, it's certain things that they do as far as they building projects to where you know it's something significant about these people that they share and hold something. So they have deified the Father, they have divined into him, and well, not deified, they have divined into the Father, and he has given them some type of wisdom, and they are doing they took some of those things, but they forgot the Father God. And when they forgot him, you know, that's when they fell and were scattered like they is. And so as you can see that we're Christian apologists, we're fellow heirs, and so we're Gentiles, and we take on some of those things that they do into the world, you know, to preach the ministry of or the gospel, which is something that they was lacking to do. And a lot of them they disbelieve, right? And they don't believe on Christ. So just to share that briefly, you know, that there's a lot of things that you know, that we see that this there that we can see that a lot of these guys are really not dealing with when it comes to its entirety. So slavery, but getting back to that point, or what we see servants, the cultural context is way different from what you see, or the narrative, what you see that happened with the Atlantic trade slave.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, man, I got another one right here. Hold on, let me see if I could one up real quick. All right, so this is a different one. I mean, same style, I guess you could say, in the relief, but in this one you can see it a little more detailed. Okay, so let me see if I could. You know, it's crazy. They even have some of these even identify some of the people. You know, because I can't really make it out on this one, but some of them even have on the release. You know, it's funny that they had you know what indicated slave on the release? Asiatics. Isn't that funny that they had the hieroglyph to identify? Well, I guess one of the hieroglyphs that they could have used to identify, among others, would have been the Asiatic hieroglyph. And you know what the Asiatic hieroglyph looked like? Person, you know, kind of similar to the one that's in Beni Hassan in Khnumhotep II's tomb. You know what I'm talking about? That relief with the people they say are the Hyksos coming in. It's funny because on top of their of the person's head, and I'll pull it up in a moment so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. But anyways, this is another one in the same style. Again, what do you see around the people's necks? Their arms are tied. They're kneeling. I mean, come on, man. Pretty obvious, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's another thing too. Just real quick, you know, when you kind of like hype it up as if you have like these killer arguments against Christianity, and they're debunked with like a 5-minute Google search,
Right.
That's a problem.
I know.
Yeah. And another thing too, I wanted to bring out something because he, I watched these. Now, number one is one of the guys in the Hangouts before, Slim, whatever his name is, 77, whatever, Skywalker, whatever. He talked about now early on. He says, where's the when it comes to the Bible, where's the original copy? Well, these guys, first of all, was until they got established, they was nomads. When you start dealing with Israelites. But when they did get established, a lot of these guys were writing on what you call parchments, which is animal skin or either papyrus for the most part. And so a lot of that stuff, it does not last long. But the thing about it is they're proselyting people, but they're not carrying a lot what you would consider a cuneiform back in that days, which Akhenaten had in 1350 BC, where you see that they have cuneiform and not doing those things. They're basically traveling with these parchments and with these different books, you know what I'm saying, of maybe an Isaiah scroll or whatever. These are parchment scrolls, animal skin, as well as papyrus, this in containers. So it's easier to travel with those things because these people are ministering to the people around the world. They were the first congregation. And so to say,
but LeBron, the simple answer to that is this. The reason that he brings that up is because he thinks that somehow discredits the Bible. But here's the funny thing. We don't have any original writings from Aristotle. Right?
Exactly.
And we know Aristotle existed.
Exactly.
See, the truth is that's not the way that textual criticism, the way that history is actually analyzed from writings is completely different than the way that Kevin and a lot of these cats in the conscious community try to go about doing it.
Thank you.
The criteria that they use is not the criteria that's used by actual scholars. They claim to be scholars themselves, which they're not. I mean, unless you want to call scholar, pseudo scholars. But needless to say, man.
Can I piggyback on that? Can I say something about that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother.
No, I just want to piggyback on that because see, that's the thing is when you're talking about history, right? Historians have certain criteria as to how they determine what's reliable and what's unreliable, right? Mm-hmm. And so what the thing is, this is a whole study. This is a whole area of study for historians. Like, how do we go about proving this or that? And what happens is they come up with these criteria so that they can say, well, we want to give ourselves tools so we can know the most about history without opening the floodgates to a bunch of nonsense, you know what I'm saying, and calling it history. And so the thing is, when you say, what about, we don't have any original literature. Well, see, now you're using that as a criteria for what is true or untrue. And as Brother Faithful said, that's not a criteria that historians use. And the reason why is because if you took that stance, you would literally have debunked about 80% of what we know about history because we don't have the original text of anything. You see what I'm saying? So it's just silliness, man. Go ahead.
Yeah. And man, I mean, this is ridiculous, man. I'm like I said, Google search will show you all the different kinds of slaves and different things. I mean, come on, man. Like, only a person who has not thoroughly done research would come to that sort of conclusion. Now, granted, it's like the thing is that slavery was and keep in mind time frame, people, you're talking about a completely different world than we live in today. But slavery was a very common thing in the past, especially in antiquity, because of droughts. If you had a drought, people didn't, you had to eat, you had to survive. So one of the things, and this is, some of it is voluntary servitude, right? That's one example of a slavery that existed. People would sell themselves into slavery in order to be fed, in order to survive, right? Slavery where you would go into a warring nation, a neighboring nation that you're warring against. You would defeat them, and what would you do? You would take the people captive. I mean, do they think that all the other nations were just doing this, but the Egyptians were just these pious, beautiful beacons of morality that never did anything wicked or never engaged in the same, things that would have been commonplace during wartime, right? And I'm not saying that it's necessarily, depending on the context, we have to examine the context of things too. I think the Egyptians were doing when they would go to war with some of their neighbors, and they would go, especially when they were, I mean, it's like they have no concept of history when they say things like, "Oh, the Egyptians never had slaves." I mean, really?
Right, and they
Like,
went. What's crazy about it is they went all the way up into the Levant area, and even had people that was in servitude to them that was in the Levant area that was not Egyptians at all. And that's not even talking about what when you start talking about the literature on what they did to the Nubians, especially during the Hyksos period, because the Nubians was working with those people up in the Levant area because they was dealing with trade, and Nubians wanted to really start trading, themselves, but Egypt wanted to control that. So they didn't trust the Nubians because the Nubians was dealing with the Asiatics that was up in the Levant as well as those people that was in India, and also in Mesopotamia, because they was coming around the Red Sea to trade with those people that was in Bahrain, and it was in the Gulf of Iraq, so, or the Persian Gulf. I'm sorry. So when we look at it, these people was all the way, they was trading with people all the way up in the Levant, but they controlled even the southern kingdom and those kingdoms that was around them, because if you look at the Merenptah Stela, it tells you, and also the walls of Karnak, you can look at the walls of Karnak when you go into Egypt, and you have the cartouches with the slaves on there, and then look at also the Merenptah Stela of the victory of the Seti the first, and also Ramses the second, and also Merenptah his son. So when you begin to look at the stela, and you also look at the wall, Frank Yorko, which is a scholar, he also said that this very poem, or this stela that we see, is a reflection of what we see at the walls of Karnak. So when you look at the walls of Karnak, the cartouches talk about all the campaigns of these victorious kings of Seti the first, Ramses the second, because they had a great run. Also Merenptah and his sons dealing with Shoshank the first and Shoshank the second. These guys had great runs. And so the campaigns that they had, they conquered those people all the way up to the Levant area, which also the Hittites was actually fighting against just as well. The Hittites was fighting against just as well. The Hittites, I'm sorry, the Hittites was fighting against just as well, which is mentioned in the treaty of Ramses II that he had with them, just as well. So we can find a lot of these conquests that we see happening with Egypt, going up into these areas that was not theirs, that they basically was taken captive of, which was trade areas. And so the people up north that was in Europe, also the Assyrians, was fighting until eventually the Assyrians overtook them and pushed them guys back down into the south. And also when Nebuchadnezzar came in through the back, this is historical too. When Nebuchadnezzar came in the Babylonians during the Neo-Babylonian period, they came in and smashed on the Assyrians, and they also smashed on those people that was in Taharkanem, and fought with Taharkanem. The Assyrians fought with him, and also after them, the Babylonians fought with them and pushed those people down to the south, and that was around about the 25 to the 31st dynasty that you start seeing a lot of Egyptians basically being moved around. So it's a lot of history behind when you start looking at
right
the
now,
Egyptians.
now look at this one. This is the Ramses II relief, right? I mean, are we gonna pretend that this never happened, right? Like, just no pretend that. I mean, I'm just showing these
Right now,
different things because,
mind you, not
again,
these people are not even in, and these people are not even in. They're not even. And if you notice another thing too, if you look at this is an Asiatic guy that's right here, with the beard. As you can see, you see Ramsey the second, and he's the same color as the Asiatic guy here. And as you can see, Ramsey he doesn't have a beard.
you got three colors here. You
You got
got
the
very dark.
Nubians,
You got
yeah,
kind of yellow guy back here.
right. And if you look at it, but I was just pointing out how the he's the same color as really the Asiatics, because it's how how they depicted themselves as a ruddy red type of color. So some of the Egyptians were identical to those people that was in the Levant, those Asiatics that was in the Levant. So and not
But see, here's the thing. But do you think that they cared that they had the same complexion? At the end of the day, complexion. It was about the notion of nationhood.
right,
If
right.
you're
And the
not
only
a
reason why
part
I
of
was
our
just bringing that
nation,
out, yeah, right.
right?
And the
No,
only
no,
reason
because that's the
I
thing.
I was bringing that out because I just wanted to bring that out because you know I know we deal with some of the Hebrew Israelites and you know they you know or some of the even other people out there you know because they always saying that because there was a stock Nubian of Egyptians but these people were different amalgamations of people that came into that land, especially people that absorbed their culture as well as them absorbing other people's cultures because they did that you know especially in the Delta because the area was an Asiatic area before it was a
No, no, no.
area.
But the point that and the reason I showed that too was to show that. Do you notice that there are 3 different phenotypes of people there? Do you think that this man cared about any of those people? He just grabbed them up like they nothing to him, basically. But notice
Right,
that.
definitely. You're right. You definitely correct on that.
But notice that the reason why I'm pointing that out is because conscious community people like to glamorize Egypt. They like to glamorize all the things that happen in the Nile Valley until you show them these examples. Now all of a sudden the narrative switches, right? Now we'll see, brother. We're not denying that those things happen, right? But I guarantee you though, you know, I would like to show this to Kevin. I want to see what his thoughts are, because if he's just gonna brush that aside or make it see, you know, and try to kind of dust it under the rug, so to speak. To me, that's disingenuous because his argument is, well, the Egyptians never had any slaves, but your God and your Bible tells you to have slaves. But the funny thing is that the Egyptians did have slaves, and they had lots and lots of slaves. All right, you know, who do you think built the pyramids? Now, whether you believe that there were ever Israelites in Egypt or not, regardless, people labor to build these pyramids. Now, again, if a person does their due, now I'm just going to say, if a person does their due diligence in studying history, and they look into the history of any of these nations, I'm not just talking about Egypt, any nation, whether it be Nile Valley, whether it be Near East, you're going to realize that slavery was a common practice back then. Now, why is it that when it comes to Egypt now, all of a sudden this guy, you know, almost became an Egyptian apologist? You know, it's like, they talk about Christian apologists, but this man became an Egyptian apologist, a Kemetic apologist, trying to. And it's funny because I've actually seen, and I have to give credit where credit's due. There are conscious people who recognize this. For example, Brother G Consciousness. I believe it's not Amon Scott. Is it Timo Cyrus? They've actually been on record saying, you know, they admit that a lot of these things are true and that they actually happen. Is that correct?
Right. I believe it is Timo Cyrus, but I know Timo Cyrus, they good at kind of evening out the history a little bit rather than in the science, rather than trying to just say, well, this is what these people was, and you know, they show you their faults. They tell you like Egyptians had had some faults. It was like, hey, especially in Gozi, I have to give him credit on that because he'll post all day long that the Egyptians, you know, certain things that they did was just crooked. You know what I'm saying? And
right, but
so
being fair, and I have to say that because I don't want people to think that I'm just trying to at the same time lump them all under one umbrella in terms of that. And I'm talking about specifically that you know, a lot of people like to romanticize Egypt. But truth be told, that is what the majority, keyword there, majority of the conscious community does. They romanticize Egypt to the point that they make Egypt almost this like, it's funny because they do to Egypt what they accuse Christians of doing to the Bible, right? That what they accuse us of doing to the Bible, that's what they do with Egypt, right?
Hey, can I say something too? Hello.
Now, would you guys agree with that last statement, that what they accuse us of doing to the Bible? You know,
definitely.
oh, Christians just gloss over the Bible. Oh, Christians don't deal with this. And it's funny because that's exactly what I'm talking about, these people who romanticize Egypt do whenever you present them all this information. And G-Con, you know, because you've had tons of conversations with some of these cats, and it's almost crazy. Like they really become apologists for the ills that took place in Egypt, in ancient Egypt.
Right. And when you guys get a chance, okay, I'm sorry, go ahead. Sorry, I'm just gonna make this this real quick point. When you get a chance to, can y'all pull up also, because he talked about the Sphinx water erosion. I want y'all to pull that up on the Wikipedia, and also because I think Zaire Hawass is in there, and he was the head of antiquities, but they kind of moved him over now somebody else is there. And how I know that, because I talked to David Roll, and he's always talking about, about how, Zaire Hawass, which is the head of which used to be the head of antiquities, and when David Roy used to go to try to excavate some things or look at some things. But he's an Egyptologist, and also he's an Egyptian archaeologist. You might see him sometimes on PBS or either Nova or something like that. But I want y'all to pull that up when y'all get a chance to, after the brother state what he got to say, because when you talk about
Yeah, I got it right
when
here.
you talk about the water erosion, I want y'all to go up when it talks about it's a hypothesis. Also when it talks about when it goes up under response of Egyptologists and also archaeologists, and also when it talks about climatologists,
Mhm.
their response to those claims as far as the erosions, it might shock y'all at what the Egyptologists are saying, and also, I mean, the archaeologists, Egyptologists, and also climatologists are saying to that claim about erosion, especially Zaire Wass, who is the head of, who was the head of antiquities until he passed it over to somebody else.
Right, definitely, man. All right, so brother Adam, so you were gonna say?
Yeah, just real quick, man. I want to chime in on that point about how people romanticize Egypt, or they would say Kemet or whatever. And I think actually they extend that to the whole African continent. I think really what it has to do is goes back to that identity issue that I think you brought up earlier. And I mean, the reality is I can sympathize because here in the West, in the Americas, I mean, the image of being a black man, black woman, just being black has been so trampled upon, in the media and so on and so forth since we've been here. You have like this like kind of like low ethnic self-esteem. And I think what happens is people want to medicate that by conjuring up these romanticized ideas of quote who we were when we was in Africa. And so you have these ideas about, we was all kings and queens and so on and so forth. And then I know for myself, just telling my own story real quick, I mean, that's how I was. I'm like, oh yeah, man, we was balling in Africa. And then I started getting into history. I'm like, dang, man, hold up. When you start getting into the history, you got these African slave traders, who would take people from the interior, whether it be from the Congo or the interior, of Africa, and then march, people they had captured down to the coast to sell them to the Europeans. And if, the Europeans didn't buy them, they would slit their throats and throw them in a mass grave. Like, I'm starting to read this. I'm like, man, hold up. I thought we was cool. I thought we was, you know what I'm saying? Like these great people. But when you start to see it, and this is from a Christian standpoint, what you start to see is the fall of man is so pervasive. Nobody's exempt. Nobody's exempt. You know what I'm saying? Like
Amen.
it's not that the white man is bad and the black man is good. It's just like cops and robbers. I mean, throughout eternity, that's not what this is, man. Look, we have all fallen short of the glory of God from Adam, everybody from Adam till today. Okay, every culture, every people group, whatever. I'm saying we have all been infected with sin. And so you can romanticize it all you want. You know what I'm saying? But then when you start having to deal with the real history, you start to see the effects of sin in every culture. You know what I'm saying? And so that's why your identity can't be based upon who you are, just in terms of your ethnicity or your nationality. There's something more fundamental about you than your color, your culture, or where you're from. It's the Imago Dei, and it's who God has made us in the new creation. And that's what God is trying to restore in you. But cats bucking against it. They're trying to hold on to something, you know what I mean? That, and build their esteem off of something that's not real. You know what I'm saying? They just want to make them, they're delusional on a false history to try to medicate that pain of, this lost identity. But, at the end of the day, your true identity is found in God, found in Christ. And that's your building block and your foundation. I mean, dog, who could be more ancient than the Ancient of Days? You know, that's our first ancestor. You see what I'm saying? And that's where you start building from. So you don't have to build on this false history.
That's right, man. And brother Vecco, I know you just came in. Would you like to share your thoughts on some of the we're still talking about this pastor, so-called former pastor, I should say. And he makes a lot of say it again.
No, you go ahead. You
But
were saying something?
no. I was just saying that you have this so-called former pastor, basically trying to use the same arguments that the conscious community people tend to use against the Bible and things of that nature, and then using the same line of argumentation that we've encountered countless times in these Google Hangouts, amongst non-believers, and well, I mean, as you can well imagine, right? But I guess I just wanted to get your thoughts on this whole thing as well, just so you can chime in before we continue playing this video. Oh, and real quick, before you do that, actually, since I actually pulled it up, I'm gonna forget. So remember, I was talking about the people in Beni Hassan, right?
About what?
After that, oh, actually, you know what? The people in Beni Hassan. I was mentioning earlier because the guy in the video said, "And the Egyptians never had slaves," and it's like, what?
Oh my gosh,
bro!
They were like the first slave owners.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing. If you guys can see my screen, oh boy, here we go. Okay, do you see that? Do you see where my arrow is right here? Do you see this? Now, I can't really zoom in because I got this because I'm using this.
Which we look at the top or the bottom?
Just at the top.
Do you see this right here? Look where I'm circling. Do you see this?
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
Do you see this little character right there is Asiatic? Do you see how he's kneeled over? And well, you can't really make it out. I'm gonna try to find another one later, but if I remember. But if I could zoom in, I really wish I could zoom in on this. He's basically kneeled down and he has his hands tied behind his back. That's how they identified Asiatics. Pretty much just as slaves. Isn't that telling that they have a glyph that identifies the people basically as Asiatics by using a slave?
That's deep. That's deep.
So why? And if people don't believe me that this is a slave, man, I have to find it. Man, I have so many books on this computer. There's a book, a legit book, scholarly book that actually shows that character represented slave and Asiatic. It was a synonymous term, which is kind of strange because I figured they did that because most of their slaves came from Western Asia, from the Levant, from Canaan in that region.
It makes sense.
But so that just kind of shows you the guy hasn't really done his research. This guy Kevin Wesley, he has not done his research to be coming up with these faulty assertions, which can easily be disproven. Brother, so could you go ahead and share your thoughts? And then after that, we actually do got to read that GCon article that he told us to read in Wikipedia, and then we'll continue playing the video. So go right ahead, brother. As far as your interaction with people in the conscious community, in fact, I believe you had a debate recently with one. So could you kind of share some of your thoughts?
Yeah, I just really wanted to kind of piggyback off of what I think it's Scott or wait, we talked before, right? Is this Adam or
yeah,
Scott?
This is Adam. Yeah, Adam.
Yeah,
Coleman.
my bad, man. I got two different names, man. It's either Adam or Scott is cool. Yeah.
Oh, okay, Adam. Okay, I think I remember you as Adam. Yeah.
Adam Coleman.
It
was Scott Lane, the Black Bruce Wayne, by the way.
There you go. The alias.
AKA the real Adam Coleman.
Yeah, you were talking about
right.
Yeah, you were talking about how sin plagues every single human being, and that there's no one ethnic group that is not subject to it. And I couldn't agree with that more, man. I mean, I know as a kid growing up in Brooklyn, I used to see a lot of Asian families and Indian families, and they always used to strike me as, good people because you hardly ever hear about them going to jail. You hardly ever see them getting into fights in school, all these kinds of things. And I was actually deceived as a kid, and that was my own self-deception. It wasn't based on what anyone else was telling me. But I was just convinced at a point that those groups of people were, the most moral people on the earth, and they never do anything wrong, stuff like that. But as I got older, I started realizing that there's a lot of nasty stuff that goes on in their own countries. So when they come to this country, they're foreigners. So they're kind of chilling out. We're taking it, they're trying to do the best they can to make life more prosperous for themselves and the family. So of course they're going to stay out of trouble. Of course they're going to try to stay out of the limelight, or if you will. or the spotlight, so that you know, they don't get in trouble in a foreign land, or you know. So, but again, even you know, growing up in Brooklyn, I got into some fights with some Asian kids and stuff. I mean, they just like brothers and stuff. You know, tried to take my bike from me one time, and you know, and that just made me realize, yeah, what Adam was saying is spot on, man. That all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. You may not see one group of people over here sinning in the same way that another group of people are, but they have their own issues, their own faults that can be discovered. And it's the same thing with these people, the Hebrew Israelites, conscious people. You know, anybody who tries to act pious in the eyes of the public, they're not fooling anybody. They're definitely not fooling God, because God, you know, he can expose their errors and their faults in the eyes of the world. So, and one last thing, as far as my interaction with the conscious community, I have to be honest with you. My interaction with them has been very minimal up until maybe a month ago. That's when I started really talking to some interesting people on Google Plus. Some people,
well, you had two debates, right? You had one.
Oh, wait
Yeah,
a
you
minute,
had two debates
I'll take
recently.
that back. There was a guy. Yeah, there was a guy that I worked with, but again, the conversations I had with him were very minimal. Yeah, and I did have a debate with two individuals. They both claim to not be part of the conscious community. However, they sound exactly like them, though, when you talk to them. They use the same exact arguments. Counseling last year, counseling last year, 325 AD. They use the same exact argument. So, what more can I say except, you know, that it's just pretty much the same thing. I feel like I'm talking to an atheist or another non-believer who's you know, all of which are looking at the same material to try to debunk Christianity. And I I don't know what else to say, but that's pretty much my experience with those in the conscious community. And I think and I'll just stop with this. Again, with the conscious community, with the Nation of Islam, with the Black Hebrew Israelites, again, the common denominator with these groups, more anthropocentric or man-centered than anything else, because it's all about how I look or what am I going to get out of this thing that I'm a part of. And that's, again, man, I can't stress enough. That's one of the reasons why I'm a part of this ministry. I want people to hear the truth of the gospel of Jesus Christ. But the flesh side of me really vehemently hates the display of pride in any people, not just Black people, but, you know, white people, Asians, as well as, you know, anything. So I'm vehemently against this idea that man should be worshipped, revered, venerated, all this other stuff in the eyes of other men. So, and that's what I see with the conscious community. You know, so Black man is God, 5%ers, all this other stuff. So anyway, I'll just stop there. I think I'm just kind of segueing and rambling. So
No.
that's my experience.
You provided some you know, good insight, and also the fact of the matter is, it is true. You know, they are man-centered. That is what the conscious community ultimately is looking at. It's looking inwardly other than outwardly, right? Outwardly being what a man is supposed to do, you know, because our faith lies in God, but then their belief is that they are God, right? So they take the glory away from God. They try to apply it to themselves, being that, you know, they think that, you know, everything came from, you know, from the Black man and from, you know, ancient Egypt and, you know, that whole thing. And truth be told, they're doing exactly what the carnal, unspiritual man does. Take the glory away from God and give it to fallible, you know, sinful human beings. And you know, with that being said, I definitely want to go ahead and read this, because the brother did tell us to go and look at the erosion article. Now, G-Con, could you go ahead and share some of your thoughts while I read some of this, man? I'm gonna.
Yeah.
All right. So you want me to go ahead and? read the at the top, or what do you want me to read? So I'm there right now where it says extinct water
Okay,
erosion
so when you look
hypothesis.
at
Yeah.
right, so when you look at the response of other geologists, when it comes to the claim, well, let's look at the first one. It says response of Egyptologists and archaeologists, and one of the ones that we see is Zahir Hawass, or Zahir Hawass.
Okay.
Right there,
So
look at
you
that
want
when
me
it
to?
says response of Egyptologists and
Wait,
archaeologists.
actually, let me actually scroll down. Okay. So it says, you want me to go ahead and read this?
Yes.
Okay. So it says Zawi Hawass, former Egyptian Minister, State for Antiquities Affairs and Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Antiquities, was at. Hold on one second. Let me do something real quick before I finish reading this. All right, here we go. Zawi Hawass, former Egyptian Minister of the State for Antiquities Affairs and Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Antiquities, was asked in an interview on PBS series Nova if it was possible that a more ancient civilization might have sculpted the Sphinx. Hawass replied, "Of course it is not possible for one reason. No single artifact, no single inscription or pottery or anything has been found until now in any place to predate the Egyptian civilization more than 5,000 years ago." This reasoning and conclusion was supported in a similar Nova interview by Mark Lenner, another senior Egyptologist. Other archaeologists who have made similar criticisms include Kenneth Feder. A different argument used by, now, do you want me to keep reading or?
Yeah, we can start, and we can stop right there. Can you guys hear me now? Watch this.
Okay.
Now, when you look at it, Hawass points out to the poor quality of much of the Giza limestone as the basis for the significant erosion levels. He has concluded from present-day rapid rate of erosion on the member 2 surface of the Sphinx that the 1100 years between Khufu and the first major restoration in the 18th dynasty, or half this time would have been more than enough to erode the member 2 into the deep recesses behind
Wait, what are you
phase
reading right
1.
now?
This is a little bit down lower. And so
Where it
I'm
says
reading this
response of other
because
geologists? Is that what you want me to read?
yeah, it's same area, but it's in it's a little bit lower. But I just wanted to point that out that when you look at it,
Oh, okay.
Hawass is basically looking at the limestone that was used, because we can look at the limestone that was used on the Sphinx, and we can look at other limestone and see, is there a similar erosion that's on there, just as that fact, just as that. So when we look down, when they look a little bit away, well, I want to say a little bit away with other places, they don't see that same erosion. So that means that there has been some type of erosion that was different within those other places. So they mentioned that. So when you look at also, it says response of other geologists. That's another one you want to look at. And also, it says response of the climatologists. And what are they saying? So really, the evidence is against you when you're using the erosion hypothesis. It's really against you, you know. So you might want to try to rethink that hypothesis, because it's been overturned by the major people who have been in that place, as well as climatologists as well. But you can continue if you want to read the response of climatologists or
okay. So let me go ahead and read that real quick. So yeah, recent studies by German climatologists Rudolf Cooper and Stefan Kropelin of the University of Cologne suggest that the change from a wet to a much drier climate may have come to an end around 3,500 to 1,500 BC, which is as much as 500 years later than currently thought. Egyptologist Mark Lenner believes this climate change may have been responsible for the severe weathering found on the Sphinx and other sites of the 4th dynasty. After studying sediment samples in the Nile Valley, Judith Bunbury, a geologist of the University of Cambridge, concluded that the climate change in the Giza region may have begun early in the Old Kingdom, with desert sands arriving in force late in the era. That mud brick masbas on the Saqqara Plateau.
Yeah, that's mastabas, and that's another thing, because right there, pause right there. Now, mastabas is the earliest mastabas that we have that we see with mud brick was used in 2800 BC, around that time,
And the earliest besides that within the Nakata 2 period is where we see mud bricks is being used to inline the grave sites at the Nakata 2 period. Now mud brick is actually predates in the same architect predates Egypt, earlier being used in the Ubaid period and also the Uruk period in Mesopotamia. So actually
Right.
mud brick came into on how you make mud brick came into the Nile Valley and was earlier in the Ubaid and also the Uruk period. And also you might want to look up Eridu because Eridu shows you that there's mud brick that's being used there. But go ahead, brother.
Right. Right. So it says right here. Let's see. So where was I? Right where he says Saqqara. Okay. So it says the mastabas on the Saqqara Plateau, about 20 kilometers away, indisputably dated to Dynasty 1 and 2, have survived relatively undamaged, which he believed indicates that no heavy rainfall has occurred in the region since the early dynastic period, and nor was any heavy rain anticipated by those early dynastic period communities who built those structures. It says readers replied to this, stating that they were, quote, built area of high ground and do not lie within any natural catchment. These tombs will not therefore have been exposed to any significant runoff, end quote. He concludes that, quote, the fact that they are not significantly degraded, as Scotch has pointed out, demonstrates that the rainfall itself has not been a significant agent of degradation in Egypt. Rainfall runoffs, however, have been a more significant factor. Scott cites evidence of floodwater damage in another location to illustrate this. All right, so with that being said, is that what you wanted me to read? Is that it?
Oh, you're right. Yeah, that was basically it. So just to show you that it's but there's more evidence of people that disagree with that hypothesis. This is dealing with archaeologists and also Egyptologists and also climatologists than those that agree with it. So they really, the people, and these are people that are firsthand on the scene. Because if you're going to say that there's this water erosion that's on this limestone that we see on certain parts of the Sphinx, then it has to be not just on those certain on those certain parts, but in other areas, especially when you start looking at mud brick and different things just as well. So even though we see that some of that stuff was later times, but the 2800 BC is when Mastabas was built during that time, and that's the earliest that we start. You can't just jump over to limestone and skip over brick because they started building with brick first and then moved to limestone. We know that because we look at Doja and also Doja complexes where we see that they're building with stone, but we can also see the Doja pyramids, step pyramids are made with mud brick, which are earlier than the Doja complex. So when we look at that, you can't just say, "Oh, these people just built this Sphinx," and then you start looking at Nat the Playa that's in the. Hold on, real quick. Let me end on this one. You start looking at Nat the Playa that's in the south. Now Nat the Playa is in the south. They have underground tunnels and stuff like that, but they're building downwards rather than up. So when we look at Nat the Playa, these people are still hunting. They only go in the summertime. They're not dealing with agriculture or none of that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you was breaking up a little bit at the end, but yeah. But real quick, brother. So the audience knows exactly what you're referring to because they might be looking at this and saying, well, they might not be understanding why you're bringing out this information. Can you explain to them why you're presenting this information? What were you, kind of give them because I know Kevin Wesley had said something to you, so definitely let them know what's going on with that.
Right, because he mentioned the water erosion, and he mentioned that the Sphinx was older than what it was because of water erosion. So because the hypothesis that one of the guys came out with. And so what I did was I'm providing the evidence to show people that are firsthand on the scene are saying that they don't take that hypothesis seriously. You know what I'm saying?
Wait, repeat that last part because you're breaking up. You got to repeat that. Repeat that last part. That they don't believe what again?
They don't take that hypothesis serious.
Okay, so and that's good that you pointed all those things out because at the same time, I feel that it also shows either the fact that you know, Kevin Wesley only wants to angle for a specific, you know, I guess you could say, like, you know, specific theories that align with, you know, his current agenda or preconceived notion of what he believes is, or that, you know, he's just, you know, I don't know, either he's just not examining everything, or maybe he's just being willfully deceptive. Now, I'm not saying he is being willfully deceptive, but I believe it's either, you know, he knows, or he's, you know, just cherry picking and picking and choosing what he wants to fit what he believes, right? And then accusing other people, projecting that onto others, you know, specifically us as Christians, right? Because I'm sure that he'll accuse us of that, but then ironically enough, he's doing that for his own current beliefs. You know, but with that being said, I definitely want to go ahead and look at one more thing from the video. Brother Jay, are you there? So we can definitely check out one last thing.
All right.
And with that, we'll probably wrap up because it's late. So we'll definitely look at one last thing here. You know, so I'm pretty sure. And Adam, would you agree? So far, what we've witnessed is a lot of appeal to emotion fallacies, right? Just a lot of appeal to emotion, a lot of genetic fallacy going on. You know, a lot of but mainly appeal to emotion. Yeah.
Right. And so I think what happens is, you know, a lot of appeal to emotion, man. You're absolutely right about that. And I think what happens is people mistake, they get the lines blurred between something being persuasive or compelling and something being factual, logical, and true. And so they feel like if something hits me emotionally and it's persuasive, then, oh man, yeah, he really went in. You know what I'm saying? And I think in this internet culture with social media and all that, that's kind of how people evaluate information based upon how it makes them feel rather than the validity or the reliability of that information. And so that's why I think a lot of these viral videos can catch on, or, you know, people like Kevin Wesley can build a platform, because unfortunately, and I think I partly fault the public school system, quite frankly. You know, people are not accustomed to critical thinking. You know, and so whatever makes them feel, you know, whatever resonates with them on a feeling level, that's kind of what they gravitate towards, and I think that's what we're seeing here. You know, with Kevin Wesley, and then this brother Lorenzo. Yeah,
Definitely, man. All right, Brother Jay, let's definitely jump back into this video. And so this will probably be the last segment. Now, we could have, but for those out there, and again, if any people who, you know, agree with Kevin Wesley, or if Kevin Wesley himself watches this video, you know, truth be told, we could have gone through the entire thing, but we would have been here for like a good 8 hours just going through everything. I mean, come on, a 4-hour video, man. So we're just going through some of these things. But so far, what we're seeing is the same erroneous, illogical arguments that we hear from other conscious people or other people who advocate for similar beliefs that Kevin is pushing. But go right ahead, brother. Play the video.
All right.
But that same mentality is here today when you're talking to people about religion, about Christianity here in America. It's how can you not be, especially if you're Black, how can you not be? This is what we do. So when you say something different, it is not people just saying, oh, well, okay, you know, everybody has a right to believe whatever they want to believe. No, they look at you like you're crazy. I've had Black people, Christians, who love my business that I'm in, but once they find out that I'm not Christian, then they have a problem with coming into my business. And I've asked some of them, I said, well, do you ask that to your Asian dry cleaner? Do you ask that to the Indian guy who owns the 7-Eleven? And they say no.
Give me a quick sip. The audio went out.
I'm really loud, probably. Hold on.
But real quick, just to address that real quick,
right,
that one point before we miss it. Look at it from this perspective. If you're telling someone that Jesus is a myth and, you know, you're going out on a limb to present your actual beliefs. Now, I don't know if that's what he's been, you know, if he's literally been telling people what he exactly believes and trying to sway them away from Christianity through his personal beliefs or erroneous beliefs. But needless to say, if that's what he is doing, he's outright telling people, oh, well, Jesus doesn't exist and all this and that, you know, just lying on Jesus, lying on the Bible. Christians, what do you expect? Now, the Asian dry cleaner may not be, presenting his beliefs when, you go get your, dry clean clothes or whatever. I mean, he may not be doing that. Now, if he does do that, I'm sure he's going to get the same reaction. Now, as far as I see this, again, I kind of look at it like, I look at it from this perspective, right? As a believer, if I go into a place of business and I know that the place of business is owned by for example, if I go in there and I know this person is not a Christian, but I don't know what exactly their beliefs are, I mean, I can sit down there and eat, but the moment that person starts telling me, well, Jesus ain't real and this and this and that, I'm not going to support that business.
Yeah.
That's just being honest. Why am I going to go and support a business that is invalid, or I wouldn't even say invalidating, but just spouting outright lies
exactly
against my Lord and Savior?
And
at that point, exactly. At that point, what I'm doing is basically, now if I go there and I continue to support the man, knowing that, well, first of all, I can speak for myself. That would go against my convictions as a believer. That would go against my convictions totally. Now, would all y'all brothers agree with that? That would go against your convictions?
Yeah, and I would actually look at it when you was talking. I would actually look at it kind of in the framework of how Romans 14 is laid out. Or even how when Christ was talking about, and apostles were talking about when you sit down and eat, basically, and eat whatever's placed in front of you, not asking any questions for conscience sake. But the minute somebody come in, yeah, man, we just sacrificed this lamb chop, to a horse or something, and then I'm not gonna sit there and eat it at that point. My conscience is gonna be against me. So the same thing, right, what you just brought out, that I would look at it that way, going against the convictions. If the people are not, if you're going to a Chinese restaurant and just sitting there eating, they got their little pictures and stuff everywhere. But when you go in there for whatever reason, when I went in there, I've never paid them attention. But if it's a situation where you go up in there and like these people are like walking by these statues, kind of bowing down and saying stuff to it and all this, kind of demonstrating their belief out in the open, and then you're a Christian or whatever, and it starts getting crossing your mind, yo, these people worshiping false gods up in here. I'm going to get up out of there. Regardless of how the food tastes, because it's going to go against my conviction, because it almost feels like I'm partaking in the act with them.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just more so like man, one thing about me, I love Thai food. Okay, I love Thai food. Now I know when I walk up in there, they're gonna have the the Buddha or whatever in there, they might have some different trinkets or something like that. I may or may not pay attention. I'm not necessarily worried about it. But if you have somebody who's actively trying to, speak against the gospel, or, just down in Christ and all that kind of stuff, then no, I'm not going to support that business, because like you're going out of your way to, disrespect, the God that I serve. So now I'm not going to support you. I mean, saying it goes for any other kind of business. So like you said, I mean, I don't know if this is what this gentleman,
whether it be black, whether it be white, whether it be,
it don't matter. Black, white, green, I don't care who you are. If you're a Muslim, look, I like a bean pie. I'm cool with bean pie. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, if you're out here, trying to, go against God and all, I'm not gonna buy from you. You know what I mean? It's just that simple. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, man, definitely. Yeah, man. All right, so brother Jay, let's continue on, my brother. Hold on, me, I tell you, am I even presenting you right now, man? I feel like I'm not presenting you.
I think you had stopped it after I had paused.
I can see.
My bad. All right, there we go. All right, you
here
good.
we go.
Yep.
Right there.
Me fast forward. They had that audio drop out.
They have a right to say something, because if we don't say anything, then people will continue in this mode of I hate using the term ignorance, but
let me go back to that. Seemed like something
that is why we have that.
We're gonna pick back up what you were saying.
I
hear you, Patrick.
But basically, I mean, to just finalize that, people take a disdain position towards you when you don't necessarily agree with what they agree with, especially in this country. So that is why that's why we have to say something.
Sure.
And that's why we have to have a right to say something, because if we don't say anything, then people will continue in this mode of I hate to use the term ignorance, but in this mode of having blinders on, of not realizing the true trap that they've been placed into.
Sure.
And really, regardless of the religion, it's a trap. Anytime you're not allowed to think freely, anytime you're not allowed to have accurate thinking of facts, and you just have to go purely on beliefs and faith and follow the dogma based on whomever has told you,
Sure.
then you are a slave in that respect. And
wait, stop right there. Stop right there, man. Actually, you know what? Let him finish his thought. Yeah. So as soon as he finishes his thought, because yeah, go ahead, man. Let him finish that.
I hate to use the term ignorance, but in this mode of having blinders on, of not realizing the true trap that they've been placed into.
Sure.
And really, regardless of the religion, it's a trap. Anytime you're not allowed to think freely, anytime you're not allowed to have accurate thinking of facts, and you just have to go purely on beliefs and faith and follow the dogma based on whomever has told you,
sure,
then you are a slave in that respect. And if we don't say anything, then we are being a slave ourselves. So that's why we speak.
Right.
Okay, right there. Now, watch this. So he says that if you don't question, then you're a slave. That to basically he's advocating for free thought, right? I'm taking it that he's a free thinker, quote unquote.
Yeah.
But here's the funny thing: if you disagree with them, right? Won't they come out and start attacking you for not agreeing with their position, specifically with this whole notion of ancient Egypt and all these different things? So it's funny how
exactly
the Kemetic, ancient Egypt perspective is in and of itself a belief that is, that is promoted by conscious people by and large. Not all of them do it, but the majority of them espouse the belief in ancient Egypt and all this stuff, and the black man, the black woman is God, and that whole thing. And if you don't agree with it, at the very least, not so much even just the deity aspect, but more so the romanticizing of ancient Egypt, and we were, these are our ancestors, and you gotta exalt the ancestors and that sort of thing, then automatically they do the very thing that they're accusing Christians of doing, right? The difference is, however, that and then they'll say, well, Christians are doing it because of belief, and yet they're also doing it because of belief. And yet here they are, basically, the pot calling the kettle black, no pun intended. But so I kind of find it telling that he says, well, these people are slaves if you don't question it. But they won't question their beliefs, because I know for a fact that in that comment section or in the live chat, when G-Con was going back and forth with this brother, with I won't even call him, but with this guy Kevin Wesley, in the first hangout, because he had actually shown up in the live feed when he brought up the whole erosion thing. Well, why is it that G-Con then presents the evidence and keep in mind that those citations are, they'll try to undermine Wikipedia now, but if you look at the citations, they go back to the scholars, to the books. Yeah, I can screen share it again, show you the citations in the link, in the little boxes. So why is it that when he shows actual scholarship refuting his position or what he's bought into, why is it that all of a sudden now he can't accept it, and he's like, so isn't that quote unquote cognitive dissonance on his part, using their own logic or whatever,
yep,
terminology. So I mean, so if he sees something that conflicts with what he believes, just so people know, cognitive dissonance is when you have two conflicting views, right? And but in fact, let me actually pull up the actual definition. Cognitive dissonance, man. That's Ray Hagen's favorite word, man.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he uses that phrase in like every single presentation, yo. I mean, cognitive dissonance, man. And what's funny about that, man, is it? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so here's the definition, and I'm not going to present it. I mean, anybody can look it up on Wikipedia. So it's cognitive dissonance. In the field of psychology, cognitive dissonance is the mental discomfort or physical stress experienced by a person who simultaneously holds two or more contradictory beliefs, ideas, or values. Now, again, and I'll keep reading. It says the occurrence of cognitive dissonance is a consequence of a person performing an action that contradicts personal beliefs, ideals, and values, and also occurs when confronted with new information that contradicts said belief, ideals, and values. So why is this? Okay, so for example, just using this logic against them, right? Because they say cognitive dissonance. Well, if you can't accept this information we're giving you, then you're it's cognitive dissonance. But lies, right? If you're presenting falsehood that can easily be refuted, why would the person have to accept that? On the other hand, aren't you exhibiting the very trait that you're accusing others of having when you reject factual information that refutes or factual rebuttals that refute? I mean, isn't it kind of hypocritical on his part that when somebody shows him information, he has a problem accepting it, but he wants people to accept his, or at the very least, be receptive to his viewpoint? Why isn't he receptive to the rebuttal against the information he's presenting? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think you make a good point, and to even take it a step further, I think what you have is with Kevin Wesley, possibly this other brother, but just really, I think a lot of people in the conscious community is when you say, okay, well, I'm going to dip out, I'm done with the church, it's the white man religion, the whole nine, whatever, I'm out, peace, right? And then you come across some information that suggests to you that, dang, maybe I rejected Christianity on some false premises. You see what I'm saying? Then all of a sudden you're like, well, nah, I'm out of the church now. I don't want to, I don't want to turn back. I don't want to necessarily admit that I'm wrong. So, I'm just going to reject it. I don't care how true it is. I don't care how much information I get about Christianity in Africa before the slave trade. I don't care how illogical, my position is. I'm going to ride or die with it. I think I'm going to be honest with you. I think that's what I see in Kevin Wesley, at least in some instances, because I know for a fact from myself and from other individuals that have confronted him directly, as Brother G-Con did, he has been presented with information that just unequivocally, just completely destroys some of the stuff that he puts out, and yet he continues to issue out the same information despite the fact that he's been proven wrong. And so that to me suggests that something else is going on here, and I would have to, and I don't want to make too much of an assumption, but it leads me to believe that there's something of an emotional nature driving, this transition that he's going through, rather than it being an informational issue, which he portrays it to the masses to be. It seems to me that there's something emotional, which is really the fuel behind, this change in life that he's made, and he's trying to lead other people into.
All right, basically, they're telling you, well, we're presenting you this information, you can't accept it. The truth be told, wouldn't the cognitive dissonance be on their end if they're espousing false beliefs and somebody presents them evidence that contradicts said false beliefs? Again, or rather, what if they look into this for themselves? They see they see the information that contradicts their false beliefs, and then they're willfully fighting against it because they can't accept that what they really believe in their head about this white man and all this crazy stuff that Christianity. No, I can't accept it for a moment. I won't accept this information, so they'll fight against it to the point where they'll reject the information.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, like, when you say to somebody like myself or any of you guys who have done the research and have, it's not to say we know everything, but like when you say that Christianity was created in 325 of the Council of Nicaea, I'm not rejecting your claim because of cognitive dissonance or because I love the white man or I'm a slave to white man's religion. I'm rejecting your claim because it's ludicrous and there's no evidence for it. It's silly. That's why I'm rejecting it. It has nothing to do with cognitive dissonance. You know what I'm saying? And so these guys, I think they throw that out there. Honestly, on the one hand, I think they throw it out there to give themselves like a false credibility. And then number two, I think they try to bully people into just opening the floodgates of their minds to whatever it is these guys want to say, when the reality is no, you're just pushing false information. Nothing personal. You're just wrong, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And Brother Jay, so you could definitely share your thoughts on this too, man.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the one analogy you gave as far as the I seen somebody put in the comment section like, you know, I've gone too far to turn back, I'm in too deep type mentality. And man, you've experienced that, Faithful, when dealing with Black Hebrew Israelites, that you show them that the doctrine they're under is false, and they'll see that it's false, but then they'll be like, man, if I accept this, I gotta let everything else go. You know, so
right.
They have that mindset. And yeah, go ahead.
Oh, and somebody, the same individual, shout out to him. I don't know if he wants us to put his name in the video. That's why I say the individual. You know, when he was actually mentioning unicorns, right? Like he mentioned that the Kevin Wesley mentioned unicorns, and that was something that actually slipped my mind because by the Council of Nicaea argument that he tried to present, I mean that it's like everything else is kind of like, bro. Anytime I hear Council of Nicaea from anybody, I know that this person is pseudo to the core. Right. But man, so the unicorn thing, this is actually an easy one. So I believe the word is, what is it, re'im or re'em in the Hebrew, and it basically meant you know, an animal that had one horn, right, so to speak, or I forget how it's actually. This is actually an argument that people try to present mainly against the King James Bible. That's but remember when you were mentioning that if you center the basis of your belief on a specific Bible translation in English at that.
That's right.
That, you know, somehow they think they got you in a, they're going to get you in a gotcha moment because they showed you in the King James until you actually show them the same exact verse in a different Bible translation that renders it maybe a little more accurately. And unicorn wouldn't have been used in the way that I guess unicorn could have just been any animal with a horn, right? So a rhinoceros or some animal like that. But for whatever reason, you know, they take this you know, the unicorn usage in the King James, and automatically they assert, well, this must be talking about the mythological creature, the unicorn, you know, the horse with the horn or whatever. And so, you know, like you were saying that in the video that you did against Ray Hagan.
Yeah,
the podcast that you did against Ray Hagan.
Yeah, you don't want to base your argument on one translation, man. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's what I was gonna say. You know, just if you try to say, for example, remember what he tried to do with the whole allegory thing, right? And then so you get a different Bible translation, you show him, well, look at this one. Yeah, well, at that point, your argument collapses.
That's it.
So the same thing happens to this individual, to Kevin Wesley. That's what I'm talking about. You know, when he says unicorn, well, okay, so if we explain it both in its context, the way the King James translators would have used it, you know, with the Elizabethan English in mind, and if we take into account that we don't need the King James to, you know, show you the definition of the word, how it's, you know, or the way that it's translated in a different Bible translation,
right?
And again, nobody hears a King James onlyist. Now, I don't know if he was a King James onlyist.
No, I suspect that he might have been, though. Actually, to be honest with you, I think he might have been.
Okay.
It was something else that he said as well. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I could be wrong about that. But it was a comment that he made that sounded real KJV onlyist. I could be wrong, but I think that's right.
Right.
Shoot, I'll say this, man. Regarding the analogy given as far as, like, for example, he's gone out on a limb to say the Bible's false and all that stuff. And now, you know, the brothers that are well more learned in this area in which he's spewing out these false informations, come to him and show him, hey, bro, look, man, you know, and show him this stuff, and he'll reject it because at the root of it'll be pride. You know, you mentioned about the platform that, you know, he's building up, basically deceiving people, and you know, him saying he's fully persuaded in his mind and everything is made up, and the Council of Nicaea on the false historical information he's been looking up. The root of it will be pride as to why when people would come and show him the truth, he would reject it. And I think back on myself, you know, when I came into the Hebrew Israelite movement, because when I first came in, I believed in virgin birth. I believed that you know, that salvation for all men. Believe that all those that believe on Christ will be saved. The core things of the faith, I had believed. And then when I came into that movement, into IRC, nope, Christ is born of sex. So I stopped believing in virgin birth. No, Christ only came for the 12 tribes. So then salvation for all that believe on Christ went out the window. So I rejected basically the entire core of the faith. I rejected the gospel when I came into this movement, and a lot of the brothers, they do that. And when you deal with a lot of Black Hebrew Israelites, they got such a disdain for the faith, though they're basing their view of the faith based off a church they came out of and not the faith itself.
That's right.
They have such a disdain for it that even though you show them, I don't know how many conversations we've had with brothers reading Romans 5:19. There's no way around that. Reading Isaiah 49:6. There's no way around that. Reading the life of Abraham and how you actually and how the gospel actually is. And I don't know how many conversations we've had, but because the brothers have such a disdain, regardless of the facts that's shown, a lot of them are just rejected because they don't want to say, you know what, I'm wrong, man, because I had to do that to myself. When the Lord started showing me the gospel when I came out of the movie, I'm like, man, this is it's kind of going back to some of the stuff that I was already believing, man. I'm like, man, no, this can't be. I must be being deceived. You know, the officer told me I was gonna be blinded and all this, you know. So I went through that little battle or whatever. But you got to get over that. The truth is the truth, and when the Lord starts to open your eyes, you either gonna go with what He's showing you, or harden your heart. And if you harden your heart, that's not a place you want to be at, because the Lord will reject you, man, if you keep hardening your heart and not accepting Him. So I had to look at myself, man. So I know the root of it would be pride. Why when G-Con shows him the facts, the brother would reject it and not even want to hear it. Though he's talking like, you know, I'm doing this crazy research and this information. All right, well, look at the information I'm giving you then, because it's showing your information that you've looked at is invalid, but the brother done stepped out on a limb. He's been up a platform. People are listening to him now, you know, seeking for advice and all that kind of stuff. Now pride's setting in. So that would be the reason why he would reject it, even though it shows what he's preaching to people is false.
Yeah, can I just say something right quick too, man? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go right ahead, buddy.
I just want to set the record straight on something, man. And I try not to have it like a chip on my shoulder when it comes to stuff like this. But I got to say, as I'm watching this video, the 4-hour joint that we've been reviewing, there's a segment where they're talking about apologists. And I've been noticing, you know, with this video and another one that G-Con reviewed the other day, that there's a lot of misconceptions about Christian apologists and what we're about. And, you know, these brothers here, you know, Kevin Wesley and the brother Lorenzo, I mean, they kind of like cracking jokes and things like that about, oh, well, you know, Christian apologists, they know the truth, but they just, you know, lying and trying to, you know, of course, they throw out the word cognitive dissonance and all this kind of stuff. And what it tells me is they really haven't interacted with people who are actually well studied in Christian apologetics. Because if they did, they wouldn't say, you know, some of the stupid stuff that they say. Like, for example, brother Lorenzo made a comment about, oh, well, you know, the whole reason they believe in something is because just all because of Justin Martyr made it up. I think he was talking about how Christian apologists address the quote unquote parallels between like Horus and so on and so forth. And he says the only reason we affirm, you know, or stick to our guns is because of something that Justin Martyr said, which couldn't be further from the truth. And what it tells me is he really hasn't studied, you know, the Christian apologist position, but yet they crack jokes. And they always got something to say. And I'm like, bro, like, honestly, if you can sit down and listen to, you know, just tonight, just this one conversation, if you listen to Brother G-Con breaking down the mud brick and the limestone, you listen to Brother Jay, you know, running down the scriptures, you listen to you know, giving it from a philosophical and scriptural standpoint, bringing up the history, bringing up, you know, actual textual and archaeological evidence and, you know, information for myself. If you just are, you know, approach it from a genuine standpoint, then it seemed to me that rather than cracking jokes, you would sit back and be like, Dad, you know what? Maybe we was under the impression that all Christians could do is just give us faith, blind faith. But we were wrong. Maybe we need to sit back, pump the brakes a little bit, and actually, whether you agree with us or not, at least, you know, give us the respect of hearing what we have to say. And then got kind of going from there. But a lot of these cats, they straw man. They want to paint a caricature of what Christian apologists are like, and then they have no idea. Right.
You know, but real quick, I did want to point this out because they feel like we run from some of these things. Some Christian translations once identified the ram with the legendary unicorn, right? So you would have certain mosaics. But look at the year. Look at this year. what is this? 121380. But if we go back here, what does it say? I'm gonna read this at the top. You know, I just wanted to bring it back real quick to the whole unicorn thing. The Re'em, also or Re'im, is an animal mentioned 9 times in the Hebrew Bible, in Job 39, 9 through 10, Deuteronomy 33, 17, Numbers 23, 22, and 24, 8, Psalm 22, 21, 9, 6, and 92, 10, and Isaiah 34, 7, and variously translated as a unicorn or a wild ox. In modern times, with the Auroch by Johann Ulrich Dirtz, who discovered it was based on the Akkadian cognate Ri'un, meaning boss pygmagenius. Am I pronouncing this Aurochs? Aurochs? Aurochs?
I have no idea.
Aurochs? The Aurochs progenitor of cattle, This has been generally accepted as it is today, even among religious scholars, and it has been translated in some Christian Bible translations as oryx, which was accepted as the referring in the modern Hebrew, and as unicorn, quote unquote, in the King James Version, possibly referring to a one-horned rhinoceros, such as the Rhinoceros unicornis. So you actually had a rhinoceros that was referred to as the Rhinoceros unicornis, you know, because it was the one-horned rhinoceros. So, you know, that's just what it is, man. And granted, you know, I'm taking it that the people who, you know, like Jerome and them, who would have originally translated, would have been thinking about mythological unicorns, anything like that. They would have been thinking about, you know, an animal such as the one-horned, the Rhinoceros unicornis, you know. So, you know, with that being said, man, I mean, you know, I think that pretty much addresses, you know, I feel like, did we leave anything out, man? I feel like there's other things that we could have mentioned, but
hey,
you know,
man,
whatever
I
we
had
could
mad
have
notes, bro. We could do a whole another 2-3 hours, man. I had mad notes, man. You know
well, I'll tell you what,
so
I want you to save on to them notes, man, just in case Mr. Wesley decides to make a hangout and mention about him. We'll certainly make a part 3 to address anything that he may decide to bring out in that hangout. And now, if he does, and if he doesn't, you know, definitely in the future we'll go through his arguments, because I mean, I'm gonna be honest, man. Usually I enjoy going through bad arguments, man, but when I hear bad arguments that just seem sloppily like thought out, and like there's just I mean, I don't care whether it be a Hebrew Israelite proponent or whether it be a conscious community person. When I hear a bad argument, and it's so easy to refute, it's just like, well, like, you know, why did this person even waste our time making this bad argument? You know, why even do all that? You know, why try to be deceptive? I mean, come on, man. If you're gonna be deceptive, and I'm not telling you that you should do this, but if a person were to be deceptive, why not be deceptive with something that's complicated, right? Something that requires actual, like, true research and studying, you know, so it's a little more, you know, I hope I'm not giving them ideas now, man. You know,
yeah, I understand.
It's a little more worth our time to go through. And, you know, I'm sure that this was light work for you, I'm sure, you know, just writing a lot of this stuff down. For example, the whole unicorn thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, many years ago, I remember I came across someone's argument concerning that. And you know what, man? All I did back then was just research it, you know, Google it, you know, Google search it.
Right.
And came across the article and I remembered it. And anytime I hear it now, I'm always, you know, it always comes to memory, right? That oh, okay, yeah, that's the Re'im, you know, in the Hebrew. And then I showed them that, yeah, you know, you did have a one-horned rhinoceros called the Rhinoceros unicornis, you know, and that's more than likely what Jerome and those people would have been referring to when they made their translation, which is what, you know, the King James translators based their translation off of, you know, for unicorn, right?
Mm-hmm.
They based it off of the Latin translation, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know, it's just little things like that. And so to me, I look at it from this perspective. I feel that these people need to try better, man. They need to research. They need to stop with this silliness. You know, we're 2017, man. It's 2017. Y'all need to step y'all research up. Y'all really do need to step y'all research up, man. Conscious community people, y'all, if y'all listening to this, and you will listen to this in the future, step the research up.
Hey,
I have 2 videos on my channel. Yeah. Right. One last thing, I'll definitely let you jump in, and Jay, I'm gonna let you jump in. Yeah. I was just gonna say I have 2 videos on my channel that I recently did on other conscious community people. One of them is Jabari, and it's Jabari promoting pseudo scholarship. He promotes the Jesus Mysteries, which is absolutely ridiculous. That he thinks that he actually thought that was actual scholarship. Man. That book has been thoroughly discredited by atheist scholars. Richard Carrier is a enemy of that book. Is a huge opponent. He opposes that book just vehemently. I mean, every chance he got to talk about the book, he trashed it. And this is a Jesus mythicist. This is a guy who believes
Carrier is no friend of the gospel. That's for sure.
Right. And yet even he saw the faultiness in that book. That says a lot. When a guy who advocates for the position that book was pushing, if he's tearing your book apart, your book is trash. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
And the other thing is also, going at another individual by the name of Garfield, who was also caught using false information. And again, I feel like this is a reoccurring theme when it comes to the conscious community, whether it be Nuwapian, whether it be, Kemetic people, you name it, Moorish people. It's like false information seems to fester in that community, in that movement.
That's true.
And they're always telling people to step their research up, but then they're presenting you so much false information that it's mind-boggling. But yeah, go right ahead, brother. You were gonna say?
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm kind of just echoing what you said, but so like when I listen to one of your videos, right, and you going in about the Hebrew Israelites, I mean that's like your thing. Like I can tell that you've put in the time to research not only your perspective, to kind of beef up your perspective, but you've also researched where you're I don't want to use the term opponent, but the position that you're arguing against, you've also researched that as well, so that when you drop a video, it's not just you rambling about stuff. You've done your homework, right? And I think that when you're dealing with debate and when you're dealing with dialogue or just the exchange of ideas, it's a sign of respect to study your opponent, for lack of a better way to put it, to study them well enough to know to properly represent their view, so that you're not just putting up a straw man and then attacking a straw man. And what I see is that these guys, whether it be Kevin Wesley, this guy Brother Lorenzo, or to be honest with you, the majority of conscious community dudes I come across, to be honest, they have a disdain for Christianity and they don't take it seriously. And because they don't take it seriously, they haven't done the proper homework to at least get the Christian perspective to some of the objections that they raise. Because if they were to do that homework, they wouldn't put out so many bad objections to Christianity. I mean, that first video we watched was like literally 7 minutes of terrible objections to Christianity. Not a one of them was forceful at all to anybody who knows what they're talking about. But again, they don't respect the Christian worldview. They assume that Christians are all just a bunch of blind faith believing Bible thumpers who don't know anything about anything other than the scriptures. And so they can just kind of get over by, throwing out some Egyptology or this or that or the third. But the reality is, to the conscious community, I'm gonna wrap it up like this. If you really want to be, if you really want to be taken seriously, by somebody like, the folks on this panel, if you really want to make a strong case for whatever it is that you're trying to make a strong case for, you got to do your homework. You can't just say, well, because something makes me feel good from an Africanity standpoint, I'm just going to latch on to it and bump Christianity. You got to do your homework. Okay. Because otherwise you'll end up making videos like the ones we're reviewing here this evening, and you end up looking, ridiculous. and there's just no need to do that, yo. Do your homework. Do your homework.
Absolutely, brother. And the other thing I wanted to say is regarding this whole and by the way, Brother Jay, yeah, actually share your thoughts, man. I mean, what we've seen tonight, man, just kind of, because you know we're kind of winding things down. I mean, on everything as a whole, man.
Well, kind of going to regurgitate a lot that has already been said. I have the same similar thoughts, man. It was really bad arguments, things that people can actually, I mean, easily look up and see that it's false. Matter of fact, when I first, I already knew that the Council of Nicaea didn't make up Christ or the Bible at all. But in terms of every little detail, what went down at the council or whatever the case is, I didn't look it up until the day. Just so that I can see. So when we look at the rest of his video, or I thought he was going to get through more of the video, but to see what else he would bring out, to see if it lined up with what actually happened. And anybody that looks up what happened at the council, they didn't make up the Trinity. They didn't make up the characters in the Bible and all that other stuff. They was actually there to confirm what was going on, just as what the Bible was already stating. As we mentioned earlier, we had the different disputations and arguments within the church, or whatever the case is, and they needed to settle that. So they went into the scriptures and basically confirmed what the scriptures already showing. The scriptures talks about the Godhead and all that stuff, and they just confirmed it there, or affirmed or reaffirmed it, however you want to look at it. They didn't make it up. That's the point. We already brought out, you have plenty of ancient writings from like the early church and stuff that preceded the Council of Nicaea. So that whole argument of it being made up then is just false. In terms of the faith, just like I mentioned in the beginning, this is all, everything that he was mentioning in the beginning. I've seen nothing through both videos so far that warrants me to think this man had any chance to stand against heresies, because none of it was talking about the faith he had. All of it, his faith was equated to going to church, raising up his hands, doing praise worship music, and the other statements that it always had to do with the works that he did in church, and it never had to do with, you know, if he had came and said, you know what, I was loving my neighbor as myself, and I was practicing all the teachings in which Christ told us to live by, and it's fake. If he had said something like that, then maybe I, wouldn't think
not that Jay.
But
can you imagine? Can you imagine? This is, you in the church, you like, praise Jesus, and then you got somebody come up to you.
Bro, I promise you, I say I won't promise. I don't know where he came from.
No, but watch this though. But you doing all that, and all of a sudden you got someone creep up like 325 AD.
Yeah, bro. I'm telling you,
Serapis.
Man. We know, man. Like, come on, man. I mean, this is the perfect scene, all right? You in this nice sized church. Everybody comes there on Sunday. The preacher give you 2 verses and shouting. The offerings plate's been up for an hour because they trying to raise a certain amount. They got 3-4 baskets up there, and then you got the praise team going for a 2-hour concert. And then they come down, and then you got the whoremongers in the corner, the whore musicians, the girls that just got off the choir shouting and praising Jesus. Now they exchanging numbers because they about to go do their thing at the church. You got all this stuff going on, and I know because when I was a musician growing up, that's how it was. That's why I say I wasn't rooted. I was living that type of lifestyle. Right. So so I know what goes on there, and it's all about music making people feel good, because you make them feel good. You get, the preacher trying to say something. You got the mothers in the corner, yeah, preach it, and you can't hear what he's saying, and all this other stuff going on, man. These are shenanigans and theatrics. That's why you have what Faithful brought out earlier. You got atheists, people that don't even believe at all, going to the church to be amused. That's basically what they went there for, to be amused. And I guarantee the people in the church didn't realize it. They're sitting there going, hey, welcome in. These atheists that don't believe, and they're just there to be amused. There's no discernment going on. Like the scriptures talks about an unbeliever that may come into the church, and the way that the church should be operating, when these unbelievers come in, they should be convicted. Like they should not leave without being convicted by the words that's coming out, by the prophesying that's coming out. There's no reason they should be coming over and over to just be amused.
And Brother Jay, real quick, man, here's the thing. People are going to ask, well, what can a person do to bring someone like that back? Well, I'll say this. The only one who can convince, the only person that, that can convince Kevin Wesley to come out of that is the Holy Spirit. And if he stays in his willful ignorance and he dies in that state, he's made his bed. You know, he has made his bed. At the end of the day, that's it. That's what he decided. That's what he chose, and he's gonna have to live with that decision, right?
And I tested it.
I was now the only thing we can do with these videos is show the faultiness and hope that he'll feel the conviction of the Holy Spirit. That the Holy Spirit will convict that man, that he'll come out of his heresy, that falsehood. I wouldn't even just call it. I mean, this is utter, just pure falsehood. Heresy would be if he actually were holding to some semblance of a belief in the Bible, but since he completely rejects it, he's just an utter falsehood. And not saying that heresy isn't falsehood, but obviously his falsehood is just outright rejection. And the only thing we do is pray that the Lord would convict him and have mercy upon him. That one can do. We sow the seed, and the scriptures do talk about the parable of the sower, where you sow the seed, some of it falls on the rock, some of it gets eaten up by birds. Some people for a time believe, but then they fall away, not because the seed took root, because it tells you the seed didn't take root. That's why they left. Had the seed taken root, they wouldn't have left. Yeah. Right? Now, the seed that goes into that good soil, it stays there. The Lord makes that soil good, right? And that seed will be in that soil. Why? Because that person trusted in Christ. I don't know if Kevin Wesley trusted in Christ. If he says he was a pastor, and based on listen, man, I don't know if this guy was a pastor or not. I'm not going to bear false witness and say he was or wasn't. I'll say I'm if he's skeptical of the Bible, I'm skeptical of his belief of being a pastor, just based off of the silly objections that he's raising. I mean, some of the stuff that he's saying is just utterly crazy and ridiculous, but and really just illogical. But I feel that the only one that can convince him is the Holy Spirit, and we pray that's what the Lord does, and we'll continue to make videos like this in hope that in hopes that one day that he'll come out, Lord willing, that the Lord would have mercy and that he'll repent and turn away from that path that he's heading down. But if he doesn't, then that'll be between him and God, and we hope that he doesn't end up
Hey, can I say something right there too? And I know we're about to close out, but I just wanted a little tidbit. Really, this is for the believers out there. That it says in the book of Proverbs, and I don't have it off the top of or right in front of me, but it speaks of, or advises us rather, to keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it flow the issues of life. Which means to guard your heart, with everything that you got. Okay, and just what we're doing here with Christian apologetics is not about trying to make ourselves feel good about what the Bible says. What this is, we're giving you tools by which you can affirm the truth. I'm saying you can latch on to the truth and hold on to it. You can guard your heart, defend the truth. I'm saying that's what we're doing. We're giving you the tools to do so. And so whether or not, I prayerfully Kevin Wesley will repent and turn away from falsehood. Him and whoever
Lord
else
willing,
may be following, Lord willing. Right. But for the believers out there, what I'm encouraging you to do is get rooted and grounded, in the word, number one, and then also take advantage of the historical, scientific, and philosophical evidences that support the Christian worldview. We have all these things at our disposal, but we're not using our whole arsenal. You see what I'm saying? And so make sure that you evaluate yourself to these things, because you never know, you may come across a Kevin Wesley in your life, and have to defend the faith and hopefully lead someone, point someone in the direction of Christ. And these tools can be helpful in doing that. The Holy Spirit can use these things as well. So I just kind of wanted to throw that in there.
Right. Absolutely. I want to say this real quick. Can you guys hear me before because I got bad signal. So so we brought out certain things. There was a claim with the 30,000-year-old pyramid thing. Then there was a claim with the Council of Nicaea scene and that deal, and then some other claims that there was as far as historical claims, and so we brought out some of those things tonight so people can see, as well as his what he believed about Egypt and why would he run to Egypt, which was kind of weird, and their gods. But you know, we brought those things out. So there's a lot of claims out there that he brought out that we can look at and chase after, and, you know, just as well too. That we dealt with some of those things tonight. You know, it's just totally ridiculous. Some of the scholars, you know, that he mentioned within that dealing with who was that? I think it was one of the scholars, Jer, Scholar, that's his name, Scholar and John Anthony West. That's, you know, these scholars, and then shock them. It still doesn't, you know, when you deal with them, most people consider them as pseudo. You know, when you really do the research on these guys, you know, and then also one of them is an alternate Egyptologist, so alternative Egyptologist. So when you really deal with the information and you look and you examine it, then you realize that, you know, he's using a lot of pseudo sources. I think it was a claim that was made, something that he did, you know, tonight. I forgot it was something about the Council of Nicene that y'all brought out that was kind of weird too. So a lot of his sources are really pseudo that he's getting, and I'm pretty sure it comes from probably the Dr. Clark and also Dr. Ben and also other people who was in that conscious movement. And some of that information was good, but a lot of that information was just built just it's just dealing with some type of black consciousness movement, you know, to empower, you know, the blacks and the counter, you know, Eurocentrism. So I think we brought out a lot of that stuff, but I seen that he listened in, you know. I don't know what his response would be, but my prayer is that you know, he will come back and recognize that those things that he may see in science or in some of the history is just not really, you know, furnished up properly like they should be and need to be looked at closely. Because even the very people that's dealing with the information don't even agree with certain things that he said. Just 30,000, they'll give it 10. They'll give it about 10,000 to 5,000 years at the most. You know, certain with dating certain things. But just to say 30,000, and then, you know, when you get past the erosion, then now you want to how they lined up with the stars. That's the next argument they're gonna bring. So we pretty hit with the arguments there.
Right.
So just
So,
let's pray.
well, I'll say this, brother, and at the end of the day, it's nothing that you know, it's nothing that any one of us. Hold on a second. It's nothing that any one of us is going to say that's going to convince him, right? It's not the intellectual argument that ever convinces, it's the Holy Spirit. Now, the Holy Spirit can use the intellectual argument, but remember, it's the Holy Spirit using that argument to convince that person. He can use whatever he wants. But ultimately, man, it's the Holy Spirit. And the only thing we can do is pray to the Lord that this man will feel the conviction of the Holy Ghost, that he'll come out of his state, that he'll, Lord willing, will, you know, that he'll eventually realize the folly that he's in, right? But if he, you know, whatever his decision, you know, he's gonna have to live with that decision, right? And we just pray that the Lord have mercy upon him, and we will continue to make these videos in hopes that he does feel that conviction. You know, Lord willing, he feels that conviction. And also for, you know, the brothers and sisters in Christ out there, so they can have a defense, as the brother Adam Coleman so eloquently presented, you know, that we give this as a basis, as kind of just like a starting point for brothers and sisters to go out there and start doing research to get armed in order to, you know, give an apologia, give a defense. You know, for those who don't know, apologia means defense in Greek, you know, defense of the faith, you know. And, you know, guys, I'm going to go ahead and end things. You know, I want to thank you guys for coming on through. Pleasure. So I'm going to let you guys, man. Yeah, I'm gonna let you, you know, Scott, since I know, you know, I'm like calling you Adam and Scott, you know, the Black Bruce Wayne, the real Adam Coleman. So, brother, could you let everybody out there know where they can find you on YouTube and your podcast and different things like that?
Yeah, man, definitely. You know, I got the podcast, the True ID podcast. That's, you can find that at www.truidpodcast.com. That's also available on iTunes. You can subscribe to me on iTunes. I also have the you know, my YouTube page, which I think is Scott Lane. That's a shame. I should know my own YouTube. I'm pretty sure it's either Scott Lane or True ID, one of them. You know, that's terrible right there. I should know that. But you can also catch me on Facebook, Adam Coleman. You can catch me on Twitter at Scott Lane 7. And yeah, man, just definitely, Brother Faithful, want to say I appreciate you having me on again. And it's all love, man. We ain't trying to beat nobody in the head, man. We're just trying to spread the love of Christ and defend the faith, man.
Amen, man. Amen. Absolutely, my brother. And to the Brothers G Consciousness, our other guest, brother, can you let everybody out there know where they can find you on YouTube and all your other?
Yeah, you can find me at G Consciousness. Consciousness is spelled with a K. Go over there and go check out my YouTube page. We've been having great discussions over there concerning the law, and also discussing with some of the Hebrew Israelite proponents. So just come and check my page out. As well as check out G Consciousness Radio on Blog Talk Radio.
All right, that's what's up, brother. And to my brother Jay, can you let everybody out there know how they can get in contact with you, YouTube and social media and everything else?
No problem. You guys follow me on well, not follow me, but subscribe to me on YouTube. My page BROTHA, that's brother, and then the letter J. As well as you guys can subscribe to my music page. Type in Jay the Producer, that's the letter J, THE producer, or jadaproducer.com. Or Instagram at J_the producer with 2 R's on the end. So that's where you guys can find me at as well online. You there, Faithful?
Oh, my bad. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now.
Yeah, so I just want to let everybody out there know where they can find the brother Vekel, since he's not here to promote his channel. You can find him on YouTube. That's V as in Victor, so it's VEKL. Definitely go and check him out. He has an incredible series. I mean, he's got a bunch of series, man. He's got this incredible virgin birth defended series. For anybody out there who has to deal with Hebrew Israelite proponents who reject the virgin birth. He has a wonderful cartoon series entitled 12. So definitely check that out. He has a playlist on his channel. Well put together cartoon series that deals with eschatology, last days, for people who are, into, maybe movies that, kind of like, what's that movie? The one with Left Behind, movies like that. If you're into that kind of thing, the Left Behind series, definitely go ahead and check out his 12 cartoon series. Also, want to send out a shout out to the other brothers and soldiers of God, Kemuel, Marcus, Cleveland. Definitely wish y'all brothers could be here. But of course, there'll always be a next time. And with that being said, man, I hope this has edified y'all out there. Please keep definitely keep him in prayer. And keep the other brother in prayer. Keep all those people in the conscious community in prayer. They need the prayer. Definitely keep them in prayer that the Lord would convict them and that, Lord willing, they would all come out. With that being said, God bless you all. I hope this has edified someone out there, and take care.